I think we're about to be arrested because we're standing on the sidewalk, and you said you want to...
Move out of the way, sir. Move.
We've been standing here all day, sir.
Let's go. Come on, let's go.
Okay, so that's what's happening here. So people are here, and they're standing on the... You can see what's happening.
Let's go.
We've been standing here all day. They told us to come here. I can't move. I'm not going to resist a police officer. So I'm being pushed back by the police officer. You can see this is exactly what the citizens have been dealing with. So we're going to... Now you see why people are so upset here. Because we have been here all day. They moved us here and told us this is our location. And they're doing the same thing to the people. So we're on national television. So imagine what they're doing, people, when you don't see on national television, the people who don't have a voice like we do.
As the media brings us the pictures, President Barack Obama finds himself stuck right in the middle of a quandary that could indeed be called of his own making. The first African-American president considering what the proper course of action should be with regard to a near week of riots in Missouri. His attorney general looking at an issue with so many others that could be investigated. And that means plenty of political fallout on this and other items as well. Welcome back to MidPoint. Veteran political analyst and our own commentator Dick Morris joins us today. Dick, pleasure to see you again, my friend.
Hey, Ed, good to be here.
Let's go ahead and start right out in Ferguson, Missouri. What kind of a corner has the president backed himself into here?
Well, I think that before the president gets into a corner one way or the other, the American people have to come to a consensus across racial lines about what happened in Ferguson. And I think that consensus is just beginning to take shape. I think that yesterday the consensus became that most of the demonstrators are being incited to riot or being used as a cover by criminal elements, out-of-state people who are coming in to either loot or to score political points. And I think the malfeasance, in a sense, of the demonstrators, of many of them, and of the elements trying to exploit them, has become more and more accepted by people. That's been ratified by the troopers, the commanders, the governor's people, and so on. On the other hand, the other side of the equation is what happened in that car and in the aftermath of the shooting. And once the American people come to a verdict on that, it will be a pretty unanimous verdict. It'll be something driven mainly by the facts, not by the rhetoric. And that will create a strong political reality which Obama and everybody else must deal with. Now, right now, the jury is still out on that, literally and figuratively. I personally have been impressed by the fact that Brown obviously punched the police officer, bad enough to mess up his eye socket, to break it. And obviously there was a struggle inside the car, which meant that Brown must have reached in to get the gun. Both of those would seem to be incendiary acts. Now, what happened after that, how he shot Brown, at what distance, whether Brown was charging or running away, was he trying to surrender or not, those are other facts that are going to be determined as more and more testimony dribbles in, and as the police department releases things like Brown's clothing to determine whether there are powder burns and stuff on them. But I think that once a national consensus is reached, Obama has got to fall in line with that. If he defies it and if he tries to launch an investigation counter to it, then I think he could be badly hurt. But as long as he basically plays a supportive role and goes along with what the facts seem to be, I don't think this will hurt him much.
What is the underlying opinion, though? Because we hear from a lot of African Americans that they believe that Barack Obama has abandoned them ever since he was elected, that he has turned his attention to immigration and other people, and they simply are not getting what he promised when he was elected. What is the fallout of all this, and what is the general consensus in political circles about how he has handled this or mishandled it, I guess?
Well, I think until immigration, he's not made any major missteps. I think there is a feeling that his programs haven't worked. I mean, for goodness sakes, the median income of the lowest quintile of our country, the poorest 20%, has dropped by 8.5% since Obama became president, a steepest drop than for any of the other segments of the population. But I think that immigration poses a unique threat to him, because the influx of immigrants, particularly the agricultural immigrants and construction workers and other occupations where he's considering expanding dramatically the guest worker program really do pose a threat to the wage levels of native-born Americans who perform similar jobs, many of whom are black. And I think you could see an erosion in his black support, not in the polling, but in the turnout.
Dick, I wanted to get your take on Eric Holder going to Ferguson, Missouri. There are many people asking a lot of questions saying, you haven't been to other places. There are certainly other places in America that deserve some sort of attention and greater scrutiny, but you've chosen to go to Ferguson. Your take?
Well, it's a dangerous move for him because, first of all, he doesn't really have any authority there. This is not an interstate crime. Murder is not a federal crime. Violating one's civil rights is a federal crime, but he would have to kind of supersede the local jurisdiction or be irrelevant. There's nothing worse than kicking around there while everybody else has the power and you're just, in effect, a distinguished demonstrator. And yet he can't go in and blow aside the prosecutor, the grand jury, and the whole bit and basically set up shop and say, I am the law. So I think it's a very difficult situation for him. I think he's going because Obama doesn't want to go, and somebody has to go, so they're sending Holder. But I think that it's going to be a very difficult role for him to play, not the least because of his own proclivity, which is to be outspoken and fairly left on issues like this. And what the public would not want is a politicization of Ferguson.
Couple of interesting items here. Let's go ahead and spin to Hillary Clinton here and her non-presidential bid, I guess you could call it that. Las Vegas Review Journal recently got a copy of Mrs. Clinton's contract for a speech at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. $225,000. That is a reduction of her normal $300,000 speaking fee. And right behind that was the Wall Street Journal saying that quite 10% off sale, sure. The Wall Street Journal right behind that saying that she has to be very careful now because a lot of these book appearances are not portraying her in a very presidential light and hurting a lot more than they're helping.
Well, I don't think it's so much a question of dignity or presidentiality. I think it's a question of living high off the hog. I mean, she's not president, and she insists on a Gulfstream jet to take her to events. The presidential suite, wherever she is, backup rooms for her aides and everybody, full business class airfare for her aides to fly there, that she be the only one on the stage, and a whole list of other requirements. I think that does not look well, particularly as she tries to make the issue of income inequality and speak on behalf of those who don't have very much. And I think that this flies into or cuts into the issue of being dead broke when she left the White House, she said, and yet earning all of these speaking fees and over $100 million in income. And I think that this all goes to portray Hillary as, on the one hand, out of touch, on the other hand, poor judgment, foot-in-the-mouth disease, and I think that this is all undermining her presidential candidacy.
Well, let's go ahead and look forward to that presidential candidacy. There's that name once again. Elizabeth Warren just keeps showing up every single time you read any sort of an article, and she always says, absolutely not going to happen. Again, though, as we continue to look forward, I know that you're right on top of the story at all times here. Is this, again, are we still working towards that inevitability here? Are we still on track?
I think you're looking at a replay of 1968. In 1968, everybody knew that Lyndon Johnson was very vulnerable, that he probably could not win the election coming up against Nixon. And everybody was looking for Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General, to step into the race, challenge Johnson, defeat him, win the nomination, and go on to win the election. But Kennedy was overtly and constantly, firmly refusing to run over and over again. So the left went out and got an unknown senator from Minnesota, Eugene McCarthy, who nobody had never done anything. He didn't even want to be president. He said he was running to create an opportunity for people to vote on the war in Vietnam by voting for him. And he did very badly in the early polling. And then all of a sudden in New Hampshire, he got 43% of the vote. That's a landslide defeat. That means he was wiped out. But because it was such a high vote share in the 40s, the media played it as a huge win for McCarthy and a huge defeat for Johnson. And the result was that McCarthy was buoyed. He went on to win the Wisconsin primary, actually win it. And then Kennedy entered the race and Johnson withdrew. I don't think Hillary's going to withdraw, but I do think the part of Lyndon Johnson is being played by Hillary. The part of Bobby Kennedy is being played by Elizabeth Warren. And the question remains, who plays the part of Eugene McCarthy? There are a number of people. O'Malley, the governor of Maryland, probably the best. Schweitzer, governor of Montana. The senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. Maybe Jerry Brown in California, the governor. And I think that politics abhors a vacuum.
And we've got all these names sitting here, unfortunately, but we are all out of time, Dick.
Right.
I'm sorry. We got to come back and do this again, and we got to take hours
when
to do
I
this.
hear the music, I know what it is.
You got it. Dick, thanks so much. MidPoint continues.